Welcome to Payment Matters. I'm your host, Jeff Lin. Thanks for tuning in today. On the show, we talk about the ever-changing landscape of healthcare payments and the impacts to payers, providers, and consumers. You can follow the conversation on Twitter at hashtag Payment Matters and follow me at Jeff B. Lin. My guest today for today's episode is Ben Beadle-Ryby, co-founder and vice president of AKASA. Ben, it's great to really have you here on today. And maybe for our listeners here, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and experience.
Yeah, of course. Jeff, first off, thank you for having me. It's a real treat. I will quickly say that it's a delight to be on the line with you, but I much prefer the last time we got together at the Health Evolution Summit in person. That was such a treat. So just to give your listeners a little bit of background on me, I am one of the co-founders here at AKASA, and AKASA is a company devoted to automating complex workflows in healthcare operations. We started first with the revenue cycle for hospitals and health systems, really the provider community. So we are based out of Silicon Valley and fortunate to be serving providers that deliver care in all 50 states, over 475 health systems, 8,000 outpatient facilities. Just for me, by way of background, I spent my career in healthcare services and technology. Really have been in healthcare economist for my entire career. So I was at the advisory board company for many years where I served as a partner there. I spent some time at Optum. And across those domains, we continued to see how challenging the healthcare payment landscape was and reimbursement. And it really gave us an opportunity to say, how can we address some of the administrative challenges and the administrative waste that occurs in healthcare by applying advanced machine learning and automation to the problem? So with that, I'm delighted to be here.
That's great. And I do agree. It's meeting in person is always much better, but glad to definitely have you on today's show here. One thing I wanted to just understand here said, you're focusing on automation, and I've read elsewhere that it's been talked about for a long time, but now I'm hearing from clients and so on, and I think I've heard you say this, which is it used to be nice to have, but now it's becoming more and more critical. And what's driving the shift to the criticality of automating the healthcare operations?
Yeah, I completely agree that this is something that health system executives are no longer seeing as strictly kind of a nice to have, a nice in concept, but it is a need to have. It's essential for supporting operations and doing so efficiently. I think that there's probably two key driving factors to how much this is accelerated. Number one is just the ongoing challenges in bending the cost curve alongside the advances of technology and engineering and artificial intelligence to help solve these. And then number two is the pandemic and COVID, which really acted as an accelerant for adopting these types of technologies. There has been so much that has come out of COVID-19, whether that is the emergence of telehealth and digital health, staff working from home, and then most recently, the Great Resignation, where organizations are now saying, hey, we have to turn to automation in order to get to the work that our organization needs to do. And so interestingly is at AKASA, we did a survey last year, which was amongst health system executives, and it found that 78% of health systems are either currently using or they are pursuing automation in the next 12 months. And that was a 12% increase from the prior year. So it is a marked difference and shift in terms of the thinking. And that is where really organizations have said, we need to embrace this. We need to see how this fits into our operations.
Yeah, it's good to see the sort of increase in focus here, and I call it the administrative side of healthcare is very different. It's more in the back office when you think about this. But why maybe for the audience here, like, why is this so difficult? Like, what makes it so complex in terms of this automation in the back office, and why do you think, like, and these health system executives who are now focused on this, what makes this revenue cycle processes on the back end so complex?
Yeah, gosh, that is a loaded question. There's so much to unpack there. I mean, the healthcare industry as a whole is incredibly complex, and it's given us challenges to solve, but those challenges are felt both by patients and as well as the organizations that deliver care to them. When you think about an area like the revenue cycle and medical billing and the relationship between providers and third-party payers, there are so many nuances and intricacies that we have introduced over the years through this system. As we look at healthcare on the whole, right, there's $3.6 trillion in annual spend in the U.S. healthcare today. 500 billion of that, sorry, was classified as administrative waste associated with medical insurance and billing. And that is because you have numerous different provider entities that are serving a vast patient population that all presents with different things, and they have different contracts with each and every one of the health plans that they work with, and those contracts govern different payment rates, carve-outs, and nuances that are served by over 140,000 codes in the ICD-10 code set, right? And so when you think about just the sheer numbers associated with this, that's where complexity gets served. As we break it down from that macro look to an individual health system, the average health system spends 3% of their net patient revenue, their annual net patient revenue, on revenue cycle resources, right? The resources dedicated to helping them capture their reimbursement. That metric is called the cost to collect in this industry. And for years, we've been trying to bend that cost curve. And we've really plateaued with what we can get through bolt-on applications, through dashboards and analytics. And it's really where automation is a huge solution to help actually achieve some of those efficiencies that we've been seeking for a while. So hopefully that gives a little flavor as to just why some of the complexity exists and why organizations are increasingly turning to and seeing value from automation to helping them address that.
Got it. That's interesting here. And I think it might be helpful here for our listeners, which is, how do you go about doing this? Is there a magic to automation? Is there a robot sitting in the back end doing something here? What does that mean? How do you actually go about actually helping these health systems actually automate their revenue cycle?
Yeah, it's funny you use the word magic, because when we have rolled out and deployed our automation, we have had some of our customers describe it as magic, like, wow, that is magical. But what underlies that actual outcome and that result is a kind of dedicated approach to combining advanced machine learning with expert human intelligence to guide when human judgment is required, right? So the way that we support health systems is with a platform we called Unified Automation. And the way that this first works is we have a lightweight application that actually observes all of the work that frontline staff members are performing today, right? Trying to get a good sense for where are they spending their time, how are they performing each and every one of those functions, how are they interfacing with the EMR or patient accounting system, how are they interfacing with payer portals or websites in order to complete the task associated with the revenue cycle. We use that data that's captured up front, and actually that is leveraged by a machine learning algorithm. We insert that into a neural network, and we are able to help the machine in navigating what are the inputs and the outputs so that eventually it can perform those same tasks autonomously. So the way that we deliver automation value to our clients is by serving as a team of virtual FTEs that accesses their system via VPN or Citrix and performs in their system as staff would. But given the complexity of healthcare, what we just talked about, there are always going to be one-offs and edge cases and changes that occur that the machine, the automation may not have encountered previously. And this is where we have seamlessly incorporated an expert human in the loop that is there to help navigate when things adjust or change. What's interesting is this is the same methodology that is applied for teaching self-driving cars how to learn. They take data from humans that are performing on the road. They teach the machine, how to drive autonomously. But there is always a remote teleoperation center where a human can step in if something changes. So let's say there is a couch in the middle of the road and the car hasn't seen that before. A human driver can support. For us, let's say a new denial is introduced or a new prior authorization requirement is introduced. That is going to be new to the automation. And so we have a really kind of slick and seamless way to plug an expert in on that very specific problem, resolve the problem, and in doing so, it effectively teaches the machine how to navigate that problem moving forward.
Wow, that's to the word. It does sound like magic here, and that's amazing here. And you know, it's so it's funny here that as I kind of think through this, right? Clearly, you have a lot of this experience. I think you said 475 clients that are actually using your product. And so, you know, are there things you see that are common across how you're deploying your products and solutions to these clients that can be applied to all those clients? Or do you have to do specific learning on how this client uses this denial or manages that denial? What's that, you know, I'm trying to figure out the right way to think through this here, which is, I've heard the phrase, which is, I've seen one revenue cycle operation, I've seen one.
Yeah.
How does that other revenue cycle operation actually manage that? And how do you think about how this scales and the product scales across all these health systems?
Jeff, as you were going through your question, I was about to use that exact same phrase, right? You've seen one revenue cycle operation, you've seen one. You've seen one Epic instance of Epic, and you've seen one. It's not you've seen one, you've seen them all, unfortunately, in healthcare. And to that end, there are common use cases and problems that we solve and address across our customer base that they all have staff performing and tackling today, but they need additional support. So common use cases across the revenue cycle includes automating the eligibility process or automating prior authorization process, right? Going out and submitting an authorization with a payer, securing that authorization, checking the status of it. As we flow on through to the back end, checking the status of the claim, resolving claims edits or denials. So these are common use cases across different health systems, but every health system has their own unique rules, their policies, procedures, the way that their own system was set up, and they have their own unique contracts with the payers that govern their relationship with those health plans. And so you need to build a system that is able to leverage some of the similarities and overlap in the task by task approach across those different groups, but also be able to accommodate the nuances of every single one. And that is actually where we at AKASA saw that some of the legacy, I'll put kind of quote unquote, automation solutions out there, like robotic process automation. Robotic process automation follows a linear set of steps. And you can't just port one set of steps from one client over to the other. It is where you actually need true advanced machine learning to be able to accommodate and learn from the different behaviors and patterns within each and every client environment to support them. And so it has put us in a position where we can really deliver value at scale. As we thought about automation, it's how do you deliver automation in an industrial way? And it requires a really advanced approach like unified automation to do it. So maybe to kind of round us out, yes, we're working with 470, I think it's 75 plus hospitals. Now, there are numerous hospitals within those health systems, and that spans many different systems and applications that each of those groups use.
That's amazing. And I'll say, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Payment Matters. I'm joined by Ben Beadle-Ryby of AKASA, and we're discussing revenue cycle operations, AI, machine learning, and really how that can be automated within the revenue cycle operations team. So I'm kind of listening to this, and I heard you talk about the 3% of net patient revenue is actually dedicated to this. Just so where does that go? If a client actually does use AKASA, what should they expect? What are the outcomes after implementing your product? Maybe you can share some insights and from your clients about what happens.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give some insight. So we generally have customers that are coming to us with one of three goals, or maybe a combination of them. Number one, they may have an immediate pain point where they have a shortage of staff and they're having difficulty filling roles. And so automation can come in and support them and plug in to serve their needs. Number two, you have organizations that said, hey, we need to drive down our cost to collect. We need to do more with less. Can we become more efficient? So that's another reason. And then the third reason is that you have a number of organizations that have recognized the value of machine learning and automation for actually reducing some of the errors that occur in this big, cumbersome, complex workflow. And so all three of those are areas where we support our clients. I'll give you a nice example of one client that we work with that does about $1 billion in annual net patient revenue today. They serve patients in multiple states. They have numerous hospitals and numerous clinics. And when we started with them, we started on a task out of their business office or patient financial services where they were experiencing that shortage. And within just over 12 months, the machine had learned how to perform their workflows and was delivering in production work that was equivalent to 19 full-time staff members, right? And so in short order, we were able to generate the production that they had been looking for, that they needed. They couldn't fill those roles. They were so pleased with the results that they said, hey, we actually want you to start in the next year and look at some of these other areas. So we migrated upstream and started doing work on eligibility, prior authorization, and price estimation, their financial clearance stack, and had similar in kind results. What was, I think, most exciting to us is, in addition to delivering the value and supporting their needs with just production, is that during this period of time, the organization saw an overall improvement in their revenue yield. So they attributed 1% revenue improvement to their automation. So not only were they making themselves more efficient, but they were getting a top line lift as well. And that's what we consider to be the holy grail, is can we serve organizations on both those fronts? And in order to do that, you have to be able to perform the tasks efficiently and accurately.
That's amazing. So actually, when you streamline the operations, it actually generated an increase in revenue for the client.
Yeah, it did. And that revenue increase generally comes from getting actions right, accurate the first time, so that you're minimizing denials on the back end. And those denials result in either rework done manually by other human staff, or it results in write-offs where they don't end up realizing those dollars. So that's the primary driver in increased revenue for these organizations.
Wow. So it's interesting here, sounds like as you're shifting upstream here, and it clearly some great results here. Does it end? Does the product and solution actually expand beyond operations? Would it go into the clinical side? Is there a limit to where you can actually take this to streamline and automate more of the health systems activities?
Yeah, Jeff, most of our customers start with us on a specific set of problems, and that has predominantly been within the revenue cycle today. But we have the opportunity to serve them in other back office administrative areas where they're incredibly manual and repetitive today. And you think of areas like the supply chain or IT or HR. And then certainly there is an opportunity to support certain clinical workflows, right? And deliver efficiencies. This is, I think, what every single person in healthcare is striving to achieve is, can we reduce some of the administrative burden that we're asking of clinicians? The average nurse today only spends 25% of his or her time with patients delivering care. The other 75% is spent on administrivia, right? Entering data into the EHR, interpreting reports, thinking through data. We can automate some of those things. This is a big part of the reason there's so much clinician and physician burnout, right? So by removing some of this with advanced automation and unified automation at AKASA, we feel like we can improve the overall quality of care that is delivered while taking out some of the dollars and inefficiencies that exist today.
Yeah, it's what's that word you use? Administrivia?
Administrivia, yes.
Yeah.
This is an actual word that I was unaware of until not too long ago, and that's what it is, right? Just performing this very repetitive, manual, administrative work.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm gonna definitely steal that word here. So, as we kind of round out this podcast, you've been in healthcare for a while. You've seen multiple areas within healthcare, and one of the things I like to ask is, like, if you had a one wish for healthcare, and be granted here, what would that be? What's that magic pill? Is there something that you would like to see that could change, that could really transform or really disrupt, what we're doing in healthcare? And what would, what's your thoughts on that?
Good question. And I am going to readily admit that one wish is not enough. There are so many different opportunities for address, but at the end of the day, we are all in healthcare. I have devoted my career to healthcare, to improving the patient experience, to the health of communities. And we at AKASA are really driven by the mission of enabling better human health. And one of the ways that we think we contribute to that is by ensuring that a greater percentage of every dollar spent in healthcare is dedicated to care and not to the back office administrative functions. And if we can collectively accomplish that, I have no doubt that healthcare will improve for patients, families, and communities. And I am optimistic that we can get to a state in the future where healthcare, when it's talked about around the dinner table with friends and families, isn't a moment of frustration and isn't an eye-rolling experience, but it's one where people can look back and say, hey, this is working, and we have better outcomes as a result of some of the advances that have been delivered by automation and technology.
Wow, yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's the focus on the word care within the word healthcare, and it's you're right. Like that's still the ultimate mission here. So those are the matters we're tackling today, and thank you once again to Ben for joining me today. Ben, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and AKASA?
Yeah, of course. So anybody can go to akasa.com. So that's AKASA.com to go to our website, see some of our results, interact with our team there. People can feel free to reach out to me directly at ben@akasa.com. And then lastly, we have a lot of activity that we post on our LinkedIn page, updates as to what's happening, our latest partnerships, our latest results across the industry. So hopefully those are 3 different resources that people can turn to learn more about us.
Well, thank you once again, Ben, for joining me today. And I'm sure our listeners are going to be listening more and following what you guys are doing. So it's really exciting. And thank you to all of you who are listening in. Remember that you can listen into this episode weekdays at 4:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and Google Play Music, or just say, Alexa, play Healthcare Now Radio. If you have a comment about this episode of the show, follow hashtag Payment Matters, or connect with me on Twitter at Jeff Lin. You can learn more about the show at Healthcare Now Radio or at instamed.com. Until next time, I'm Jeff Lin.